Chapter 1. The Silk Road's New Dawn. Qutayba's arrival in Transoxiana *. Scene opens with sweeping aerial shots of the Daria River, its brown waters cutting through arid plains and rugged mountains. The camera pans to the ruins of ancient Sogdian fortresses. Narrator, authoritative calm. The year is 705 AD. The vast, fractured region known as Transoxiana, the land beyond the Oxus River, is a mosaic of ancient city-states, each a jewel on the Silk Road. For centuries, these wealthy principalities, Samarkand, Bokhara, Khwarazm, have thrived through commerce and cunning diplomacy, playing the great empires of Persia, China, and the nomadic steppes against one another. Their wealth is legendary, their walls formidable, and their loyalties ephemeral. Into this complex geopolitical arena steps a new governor, a man whose name would become synonymous with relentless expansion: Qutayba ibn Muslim al-Bahili. Cut to a stylized map showing the Umayyad Caliphate's eastern frontier, a thin line along the Oxus, facing the sprawl of Sogdian territories and the distant Tang Empire. Narrator: Qutayba's appointment by the Caliph al-Walid was not a reward, but a supreme strategic challenge. The eastern frontier was a bleeding ulcer. Previous governors had suffered costly defeats. The Arab military presence was largely confined to garrison towns like Merv, facing a hostile, fluid landscape. The Sogdian princes, while often paying nominal tribute, were masters of revolt. They would submit, then rebel the moment an Arab army withdrew. The logistical lines from Damascus were over 2,500 miles long. This was a theater that demanded not just a soldier, but a master of systemic warfare. Who was this man entrusted with this impossible task? Cut to a reenactment scene. Qutayba, a man in his late 40s with a focused, severe expression, reviews troop manifests in Merv. The scene is practical, devoid of glamour. Narrator: the primary sources, like the histories of al-Tabari, paint Qutayba as a figure defined by his provincial background and his psychological composition. A member of the Bahili tribe, he was an outsider to the Syrian elite that dominated the Umayyad court. His career was forged in the brutal frontier wars of the East. This gave him a critical advantage. He understood the enemy, the terrain, and the limitations of the armies he inherited. His psychology, as inferred from his campaigns, reveals a blend of meticulous calculation and adaptive aggression. He was not a reckless charger, but a commander who believed in the total re-engineering of a battlefield, both physical and psychological. He would first secure his base, then methodically isolate and strangle his targets. Tabari quote, text on screen: Qutayba was a man of great resolution and fortitude. He would plan his campaigns with care and execute them with a relentless energy that broke the spirit of his adversaries. Map animation shows a three-pronged strategic approach emanating from Merv. Narrator: his first series of campaigns from 705 to 708 were a masterclass in tactical sequencing and logistical pragmatism. He did not march on the glittering prize of Samarkand. Instead, he targeted the smaller, yet critical, regions of Lower Tokharistan, and the Principality of Bokhara's dependencies. His objective was threefold. 1. Secure the flank. Clear the southern approaches to the Oxus, ensuring no enemy could threaten his base in Merv or his lines of communication. 2. Resource acquisition. Each conquered district yielded two essential resources: tribute to fund further warfare and levies of local fighters to bolster his own troops, mitigating his crippling manpower shortage. 3. Psychological conditioning. He established a brutal, predictable pattern. Resistance was met with overwhelming force and often severe reprisals. Submission, however, was followed by pragmatic terms. He integrated local militias, offering a stake in the new order. This was not mere conquest. It was a process of forced assimilation through military utility. Cut to a reenactment of the siege of Baykand, a key fortress near Bokhara. Scenes of siege engines, trench works, and coordinated assaults. Narrator: the siege of Baykand in 706, as detailed by Tabari, exemplifies his method. The fortress was strong, and the defenders fought fiercely, inflicting heavy casualties on the initial Arab assault. A lesser commander might have ordered a costly frontal storming. Qutayba's response was tactical innovation under pressure. He implemented a relentless multi-vector siege. He used siege engines to batter sections of the wall while sappers mined others. He tightened the encirclement daily, systematically eliminating sorties. The message was clear. Resistance was not only futile, but would be met with a grinding, inescapable machine. When Baykand finally fell, the terms were harsh, but the lesson was seared into the region's consciousness. Qutayba did not merely raid, he consumed. Animation shifts to the campaign against Bokhara itself, highlighting the complex network of canals and fortresses around the city. Narrator: the culmination of this initial phase was the subjugation of the Bokhara oasis, completed by 709. Here, Qutayba faced a sophisticated urban confederation, protected by a network of canals and forts. His campaign was a war of patient maneuver. He spent years capturing outlying fortresses like Numekath and Ramathan, starving the heart of the oasis of its support. Upon securing Bokhara, he made a decision of profound strategic consequence. According to the sources, he compelled local artisans and masons to construct a great mosque within the city walls and fortified a permanent Arab garrison in the citadel. This was more than a symbol of dominance. It was a permanent node of power, a tangible piece of the caliphate planted firmly in Sogdian soil. He was transforming the human and physical geography of the land. Final shot returns to the map. The Umayyad frontier is now a solid bulge encompassing Bokhara, with arrows poised to strike towards Samarkand and Khwarazm. Narrator: by 710, Qutayba had achieved what his predecessors could not. He had turned a precarious frontier into a secure platform for further conquest. He had built a hybrid army, blending Arab core troops with experienced local auxiliaries. He had mastered the logistics of campaigning in the region, and he had instilled a doctrine of fear and opportunity among the Sogdians. The Silk Road's ancient dawn was being overtaken by a new, relentless daylight. The stage was now set. The great prizes of Samarkand, Khwarazm, and the distant reaches toward China lay ahead. But they would not be taken by a sudden, heroic thrust. They would be taken by the same machine of systematic, psychological, and total warfare that Qutayba had, piece by piece, assembled in the sands of Transoxiana. The true test of his system was about to begin. Fade to black with text. Chapter 2. The Samarkand Gambit, Engineering the Fall of Sogdian Crown. The vast, arid plains and fertile river valleys of Khorasan, a region stretching from Persia to the Oxus River, presented Qutayba ibn Muslim with a formidable challenge upon his appointment in 705 CE. Having secured the governorship of this pivotal frontier province, his initial task was not one of immediate outward conquest, but rather of internal consolidation. Khorasan was a mosaic of diverse peoples, tribal loyalties, and lingering Sasanian administrative structures, further complicated by the ebb and flow of Arab migration and settlement over the preceding decades. Its internal stability was fragile, often threatened by local strongmen and dissident groups who challenged the authority of the distant Umayyad Caliphate. Qutayba arrived in Merv, the administrative heart of Khorasan, with a clear understanding that an unstable base could not support ambitious expansion. His first years were characterized by a methodical, almost surgical approach to governance. He recognized that military might alone was insufficient. Financial solvency, administrative efficiency, and the loyalty of his diverse soldiery were paramount. He undertook a rigorous reform of the tax system, ensuring that revenues flowed consistently to the central treasury, a critical step for funding future campaigns. He also meticulously assessed the loyalty and capabilities of existing Arab commanders, replacing those whose allegiances were suspect or whose competence was lacking. This systematic reorganization, though quiet and bureaucratic, laid the essential groundwork for his later military triumphs. A significant internal challenge came from figures like Musa ibn Abdallah ibn Qasim, a scion of a powerful Arab clan who had carved out a semi-independent domain in the mountainous regions of Badghis and Talikan. Musa represented the kind of localized power that undermined central authority and drained resources. Qutayba, as recorded by historians like Tabari, confronted this threat directly. Rather than resorting to immediate, costly frontal assaults, he employed a blend of siege warfare and strategic maneuvering, isolating Musa's strongholds and slowly eroding his support base. The campaign against Musa, though not as celebrated as his later eastern conquests, was crucial. It demonstrated Qutayba's resolve and his capacity to project power within his own province, signaling to other potential dissidents that the era of loose provincial control was over. The swift and decisive elimination of such internal threats solidified Qutayba's authority, allowing him to forge a disciplined and unified fighting force. With Khorasan pacified and its administration streamlined, Qutayba turned his gaze eastward, across the formidable Oxus, Amu Daria, river. This region, known to the Arabs as Transoxiana, Mawara al-Nahr, was a land of immense strategic and economic value. It comprised a series of wealthy Sogdian city-states, Bokhara, Samarkand, Khwarazm, Fergana and Chach, each ruled by local princes, often styled Daik Khans or Qudats, who, while nominally independent, frequently found themselves caught between the competing influences of the western Tuajesh Khaganate and the distant Tang dynasty of China. The famed Silk Road traversed these lands, making them vibrant centers of trade and culture, but also magnets for imperial ambition. Qutayba's initial forays into Transoxiana were cautious probes, designed to test the defenses and gauge the political landscape. His first major objective was the strategically vital city of Peikand, a wealthy trading hub near Bokhara. In 706 CE, Qutayba led his forces across the Oxus, a logistical feat in itself. The campaign against Peikand proved to be a brutal introduction to Transoxianan warfare. The city's inhabitants, well fortified and fiercely independent, resisted fiercely. Tabari recounts the protracted siege and the eventual capitulation of the city. However, after Qutayba's army withdrew, the citizens of Peikand revolted, massacring the small garrison left behind. This betrayal provoked a swift and merciless response. Qutayba returned, recaptured Peikand, and in a grim demonstration of his resolve, ordered the execution of the city's fighting men, destroying its fortifications. This act, while undeniably harsh, served as a chilling warning to other Transoxianan cities about the consequences of rebellion. It underscores the profound human cost inherent in the expansion of empires, a cost borne by both conqueror and conquered. Following Peikand, Qutayba set his sights on Bokhara, the jewel of Sogdiana. The campaigns for Bokhara, spanning several years, circa 706-709 CE, illustrate Qutayba's strategic brilliance and his evolving understanding of the region. Bokhara was not a single entity, but a sprawling urban center surrounded by fertile lands and numerous fortified villages. Its ruler, the Bakar Quda, sought alliances with other Sogdian princes and even appealed to the Tuajesh for aid. Qutayba, recognizing the strength of the combined Sogdian resistance, did not rush. He employed a policy of systematic attrition, gradually isolating Bokhara by subduing its surrounding territories and disrupting its supply lines. He also masterfully exploited existing rivalries among the local princes, offering favorable terms to those who submitted and providing military support against their enemies. The final conquest of Bokhara involved a prolonged siege and fierce fighting, culminating in its capture. Rather than simply occupying the city, Qutayba implemented a policy of strategic resettlement and cultural integration. He established a permanent Arab garrison within Bokhara and encouraged Arab settlers to take up residence, ensuring a lasting presence. According to Ibn Kathir, he even ordered the construction of a grand congregational mosque, symbolizing the new order. This was not merely military occupation. It was the beginning of a sustained effort to integrate Transoxiana into the Caliphate's administrative and cultural sphere. Qutayba ibn Muslim's leadership throughout these early years was characterized by a rare blend of patience, pragmatism, and unyielding determination. He understood the logistical complexities of operating in a vast and often hostile environment, meticulously planning supply routes and troop movements. His ability to maintain discipline and morale among a diverse army, comprising Arab tribal contingents and newly levied local auxiliaries, speaks to his formidable command presence. He was a leader who could be ruthless when necessary, but also keenly aware of the long-term implications of his actions, preferring to build enduring foundations rather than pursue fleeting victories. The securing of Khorasan and the systematic penetration into Transoxiana were not just military campaigns. They were a testament to a strategic vision that recognized the value of consolidation before expansion, laying the groundwork for the Caliph. Asterisk Chapter 3, The Jewel of Sogdia, The Calm Conquest of Samarkand. The year is 712 of the Common Era. In the arid expanses of Central Asia, known to the administrative centers of the Umayyad Caliphate as Mawarana, the land beyond the river, a geopolitical shift of seismic proportions was underway. At the heart of this transformation stood Qutayba ibn Muslim al-Bahili, a commander whose reputation was built not on reckless bravado, but on the cold, mathematical application of force and diplomacy. To understand the campaign for Samarkand, one must first understand the city itself. In the 8th century, Samarkand was the beating heart of Sogdia. It was a cosmopolitan hub where the Silk Road's arteries converged, blending Persian, Turkic, and Chinese influences. Its walls were legendary. Its wealth was concentrated in the hands of a savvy merchant aristocracy, and its strategic position allowed it to act as a buffer between the expanding caliphate to the west and the Tang dynasty to the east. For Qutayba, Samarkand was more than a prize. It was a logistical necessity. As long as the Sogdian principalities remained independent and defiant, the Umayyad hold on Khorasan would remain precarious. The strategic prelude. Following his consolidation of Bokhara, Qutayba returned to his base in Merv to regroup. His patron, the formidable governor of Iraq, al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, demanded results. The correspondence between the two, preserved in the annals of the historian al-Tabari, reveals a relationship defined by high-stakes expectations and meticulous planning. Al-Hajjaj provided the resources, archers from the Levant, heavy cavalry from Iraq, and a sophisticated siege train, but Qutayba provided the vision. In the spring of 712, Qutayba launched a lightning strike. He did not signal his intent toward Samarkand immediately. Instead, he utilized a classic military feint, moving his forces toward the Zarafshan Valley, keeping the Sogdian king, Gurak, in a state of perpetual uncertainty. By the time the Umayyad banners appeared before the walls of Samarkand, the city's defenders found themselves isolated. Their traditional allies, the Turkic Khaganates to the north, were embroiled in their own internal power struggles, a vacuum of power Qutayba exploited with surgical precision. The siege, technology and attrition. The conquest of Samarkand was not a singular, chaotic charge. It was a masterpiece of 8th century engineering. Qutayba, understood that the high walls of the city could not be taken by infantry alone. According to Ibn Kathir, the Umayyad army deployed over 300 manjaniks, heavy catapults. The siege was a study in psychological and physical attrition. For weeks, the stones of the manjaniks battered the Sogdian fortifications. Qutayba's objective was not the total destruction of the city. To destroy Samarkand was to destroy the very tax base and infrastructure he sought to inherit. Instead, he targeted specific bastions to demonstrate the futility of resistance. The human cost was high, but it was distributed with calculated intent. Qutayba's forces consisted of a diverse coalition: Arab tribesmen, Persian converts, and even local levies from previously conquered territories. This multi-ethnic force was held together by Qutayba's iron discipline and a sophisticated pay system. He ensured his men were well provisioned, maintaining a supply line that stretched hundreds of miles back to Merv, an incredible feat of logistics in an era of limited communication. The psychological war. As the walls began to crumble, the internal politics of Samarkand began to fracture. King Gurak was a pragmatist. He saw the systematic dismantling of his defenses and realized that the calm approach of Qutayba was more terrifying than a frenzied assault. A frenzied assault might be repelled. A systematic siege, backed by the infinite resources of an empire, could only end in one way. Qutayba engaged in what modern analysts would call information warfare. He allowed messengers to enter and exit the city, but only those who carried news of Umayyad victories elsewhere. He cultivated an image of inevitability. When Gurak finally sent envoys to discuss terms, Qutayba received them not as a bloodthirsty conqueror, but as a high-ranking state official. The treaty and the calm occupation. The surrender of Samarkand in 712 is one of the most significant diplomatic events of the era. The terms were steep: a massive tribute in gold, thousands of high-quality Sogdian slaves, and the establishment of a permanent Umayyad garrison. Furthermore, the city's fire temples, centers of the Zoroastrian faith, were to be cleared of their treasures to fill the caliphate's coffers. However, the calm of the conquest lay in what did not happen. There was no general massacre. The merchant class was allowed to continue their trade, provided they paid the jizya, poll tax. Qutayba recognized that the Silk Road's prosperity was more valuable than the spoils of a sacked city. By preserving the administrative structure of Samarkand, he ensured that the jewel of Sogdia would continue to shine, albeit under a new imperial master. Historical analysis, the Qutayba method. Historians often debate the character of Qutayba ibn Muslim. Was he a tyrant or a visionary? From a strictly military perspective, he was a modernist. He moved away from the tribal raiding patterns of the early conquests toward a professionalized, state-sponsored model of warfare. His conquest of Samarkand succeeded because he balanced the hard power of the catapult with the soft power of diplomatic compromise. He understood the geopolitics of the Silk Road better than any of his predecessors. By bringing Samarkand into the fold, he didn't just expand a border, he integrated a global economic hub into the Umayyad economy. As the dust settled over the Zarafshan River, the map of the world had changed. The Sogdian era of independent city-states was ending, and the era of the Great Caliphate in Central Asia had begun. Qutayba had taken the jewel, and he had done so with the steady, unwavering hand of a master strategist. The calm after the siege was not just the silence of defeat, it was the quiet beginning of a new civilization. Sound of a gentle, persistent wind, underscoring the vastness of Central Asia. A subtle, deep orchestral swell begins, then fades to a contemplative hum. Narrator: the annals of history often celebrate the thunder of hooves and the clash of steel, immortalizing commanders whose names echo with conquest. Yet the true measure of leadership frequently resides not in the fury of battle, but in the quiet, methodical art of consolidation. For Qutayba ibn Muslim, the relentless campaigns that had pushed the Umayyad frontier deep into Transoxiana were but the prelude to a far more intricate challenge: how to transform a conquered land into a stable dominion. Chapter 4: Beyond the Sword, Qutayba's Measured Governance and Vision. Visual, sweeping drone shots over ancient Silk Road cities, then close-ups of intricately carved architectural details, suggesting a blend of cultures. Narrator: having subdued the formidable cities of Bokhara, Samarkand, and Khiva, Qutayba understood that military victory alone was ephemeral. The vast, diverse mosaic of Central Asian principalities, with their entrenched local customs, languages, and allegiances, presented a formidable administrative puzzle. His vision extended beyond mere territorial acquisition. It encompassed the integration of these lands into the broader Umayyad system, a task demanding astuteness, foresight, and a profound understanding of human nature. His strategic brilliance, so evident on the battlefield, now pivoted to the complexities of governance. The first critical step was the establishment of a robust administrative framework. Qutayba meticulously appointed governors to key cities, often selecting individuals known for their loyalty and administrative capability, but crucially, also those who demonstrated a capacity for pragmatic engagement with the local populace. Merv, already a strategic hub, was reinforced and solidified as the administrative capital of Khurasan, a nerve center from which his authority radiated. From here, supply lines were meticulously maintained, ensuring that the garrisons stationed across the newly acquired territories remained provisioned and effective, a logistical feat in itself across such vast distances. Visual, maps illustrating the Umayyad administrative divisions, showing Merv as a central point, with arrows indicating supply routes. Narrator: the economic integration of Transoxiana was paramount. Qutayba's administration sought to rationalize and standardize the existing, often disparate, taxation systems. While the traditional Kharaj land tax, and a poll tax were levied, historical accounts, such as those by Tabari, indicate a pragmatic approach. Qutayba understood that excessive burdens could ignite rebellion. Instead, he aimed for a system that provided consistent revenue for the central authority, while allowing local economies to function and even flourish. Trade routes, the lifeblood of Central Asia, were secured, fostering a renewed sense of stability that encouraged merchants and artisans. This stability was a deliberate policy. Economic prosperity, Qutayba surmised, would foster contentment and reduce the allure of insurrection. His approach to legal and social integration was equally measured. While the new administration introduced its own principles of adjudication, Qutayba often permitted the continuation of local customary laws where they did not fundamentally conflict with the broader Umayyad framework. This nuanced policy aimed to reduce friction and allow for a gradual assimilation rather than a forceful imposition. He encouraged the adoption of Arabic as the language of administration and scholarship, but did not eradicate local languages, recognizing their deep cultural significance. This delicate balance reflected a profound understanding of how societies adapt and change, preferring evolution over revolution. Visual scenes depicting bustling markets, scholars in libraries, and local officials interacting with the populace emphasize the blend of cultures. Narrator, Qutayba's governance also extended to the very fabric of urban life. He oversaw projects that improved infrastructure, repaired existing irrigation systems, and in some instances, founded new settlements or expanded existing ones to house the growing population and military garrisons. These projects were not merely utilitarian, they were symbols of the new order, demonstrating the stability and resources of the Umayyad state. The transformation of Merv into a vibrant intellectual and administrative center under his aegis is a testament to this vision, attracting scholars and artisans from across the region. The geopolitical landscape, further, informed his administrative strategies. To the east lay the formidable power of the Tang dynasty, a constant, albeit distant, presence. Qutayba understood that a stable, prosperous Transoxiana served as a crucial buffer and a potential springboard for future influence. His policies were designed to consolidate the Umayyad presence west of the Oxus River, establishing it as a secure frontier, while carefully observing the intricate power dynamics to the east. He engaged in diplomatic exchanges with various local princes and even with representatives from the Tang, balancing the need for firm control with the pragmatism of strategic alliances. The objective was not merely to hold territory, but to project an image of unwavering authority, thereby deterring external aggression and internal dissent. Visual, animated map showing the Umayyad frontier, with the Tang dynasty's influence depicted further east, highlighting the strategic tension. Narrator, psychologically, Qutayba ibn Muslim was a leader of profound pragmatism. His leadership style, while firm, was not characterized by arbitrary cruelty. He understood that true power lay in the consent, or at least the acquiescence, of the governed. Chroniclers like Ibn Kathir record instances of his calculated generosity towards those who cooperated and his willingness to negotiate rather than always resort to force. He was a master of incentive, offering opportunities for advancement and integration to local elites who aligned with the new order. This shrewdness in managing human relationships coupled with his strategic acumen, allowed him to navigate the treacherous waters of Central Asian politics. He was a visionary who saw beyond the immediate spoils of war, recognizing that lasting dominion required a deep investment in infrastructure, stable governance, and a degree of cultural accommodation. The human cost of his conquests was undeniable, but his subsequent administrative policies aimed to mitigate further upheaval by establishing a predictable, if demanding, framework for life. He bore the immense burden of leadership, constantly balancing the imperatives of imperial expansion with the practicalities of ruling a vast, newly acquired territory. Visual, a final, contemplative shot of a historical figure, perhaps a bust or a painting of Qutayba, emphasizing his thoughtful, strategic gaze. Narrator, Qutayba ibn Muslim's legacy thus extends far beyond the battlefield. His administrative genius and measured approach to governance laid the enduring foundations for Umayyad presence in Central Asia, shaping its demographic, economic, and cultural trajectory for centuries to come. He was a commander whose sword carved an empire, but whose vision and administrative skill ensured its lasting imprint. Sound of the deep orchestral hum returning, slowly fading out. Chapter 5, an enduring tapestry, Qutayba's lasting imprint on Central Asia. The architecture of empire. When Qutayba ibn Muslim fell to an assassin's blade in 715 CE, he left behind more than conquered cities. Across the Transoxiana region, the land beyond the Oxus River, his decade of campaigns had fundamentally reordered the political, economic, and cultural landscape of Central Asia. The question facing historians is not whether his impact endured, but rather how the structures he imposed transformed societies that had resisted change for centuries. According to al-Tabari's chronicles, Qutayba's administrative reorganization of Khurasan and Transoxiana established a framework that survived multiple caliphal dynasties. Unlike previous Arab expeditions that extracted tribute and withdrew, Qutayba implemented a systematic occupation strategy. He stationed permanent garrisons in Bokhara, Samarkand, and Khwarizm, not merely as military installations, but as administrative nodes that collected taxes, arbitrated disputes, and maintained roads. This infrastructure proved remarkably durable, persisting through the Abbasid Revolution and beyond. The garrison system, strategic depth. Qutayba's military colonies represented calculated strategic thinking. Drawing from reports preserved by al-Walid, we know he settled approximately 50,000 Arab fighters and their families across Transoxiana between 705 and 715 CE. These weren't random placements. Each garrison controlled a critical junction. Bokhara commanded the western approaches, Samarkand held the Zarafshan Valley, and Qujand secured the Sadaria crossing. The psychological impact of these permanent settlements cannot be overstated. Previous Sogdian and Turkish rulers had viewed Arab raids as seasonal phenomena, dangerous but temporary. The establishment of fortified settlements with mosques, markets, and administrative buildings signaled a different reality. The Arabs intended to stay. This realization fundamentally altered the calculus of local resistance. By 720 CE, just 5 years after Qutayba's death, Sogdian nobles were sending their sons to learn Arabic and Islamic law, recognizing that accommodation offered better prospects than perpetual rebellion. Economic integration, the Silk Road realignment. The economic consequences of Qutayba's campaigns proved even more transformative than his military victories. Al-Tabari records that Qutayba personally negotiated trade agreements with merchants from Kashgar and Fergana, guaranteeing safe passage for caravans that paid customs duties to Arab authorities. This seemingly mundane administrative work restructured Central Asian commerce. Before Qutayba, the Silk Road routes through Transoxiana answered to a patchwork of Sogdian city-states, Turkish tribal confederations, and Chinese garrisons. Each imposed separate tolls and offered varying degrees of security. Qutayba's consolidation created, for the first time in generations, a unified customs regime from the Caspian Sea to the approaches of Chinese Turkestan. Merchants could negotiate a single contract in Merv that guaranteed protection to Kashgar. The archaeological record supports this transformation. Excavations at Afrasiab, ancient Samarkand, reveal a marked increase in Arabic-inscribed commercial documents and standardized weights dating to 730 CE. The adoption of the Arab dirham as a common currency across Transoxiana, documented in hordes from Bokhara to Tashkent, facilitated trade on an unprecedented scale. Qutayba had not merely conquered cities, he had integrated them into a transcontinental economic system. Cultural synthesis, the birth of Persian Islamic civilization. Perhaps Qutayba's most unexpected legacy emerged from his pragmatic approach to local elites. Unlike some commanders who sought to replace indigenous leadership entirely, Qutayba, as documented by Ibn al-Athir, retained Sogdian nobles, Turkish military commanders, and Khwarezmian bureaucrats who submitted to Arab authority. He required conversion to Islam and payment of taxes, but allowed local languages, customs, and administrative practices to continue. This pragmatism created the conditions for cultural synthesis. The Persian-speaking bureaucrats who managed Qutayba's tax collection system brought centuries of Sasanian administrative expertise to the Arab Caliphate. The scholarly tradition they represented, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, would later flower in Baghdad's House of Wisdom. When Abbasid caliphs sought administrators for their new empire in the 750s, they recruited heavily from the Persian-speaking elite of Khurasan and Transoxiana, the very class that Qutayba had integrated into Islamic governance 2 generations earlier. The military legacy, lessons in adaptation. From a purely military perspective, Qutayba's campaigns demonstrated the effectiveness of adaptive strategy. His early reliance on Arab cavalry proved insufficient against Sogdian fortifications, so he recruited siege engineers from Syria and Iraq. When Turkish mounted archers harassed his supply lines, he incorporated auxiliary cavalry from submitted tribes. This tactical flexibility, documented across multiple campaigns in al-Tabari's accounts, established patterns that later Arab commanders would emulate from Andalusia to the Indus. His logistical innovations proved equally influential. The supply depots he established at 50-kilometer intervals along major routes became standard practice for subsequent military operations in the region. His system of rotating garrisons, keeping troops no more than 2 years in forward positions before rotating them back to Khurasan, minimized desertion and maintained unit cohesion. Conclusion: the weight of conquest. Qutayba ibn Muslim died violently, abandoned by troops who resented his harsh discipline and feared his ambition. Yet the systems he imposed, administrative, economic, military, proved more enduring than any individual loyalty. Within a century of his death, the cities he conquered had become centers of Islamic learning and Persian literary renaissance. The Transoxiana he brought under Arab control would produce some of Islamic civilization's greatest scholars, scientists, and poets. This was Qutayba's true legacy, not the cities he burned or the battles he won, but the infrastructure of empire he left behind, an enduring tapestry woven from conquest, administration, and the calculated integration of diverse peoples into a common system. The human cost was immense, the historical consequences undeniable. Chapter 6: The Calm Conqueror's Verdict, a critical analysis of Qutayba ibn Muslim al-Bahili's legacy. The annals of military history are filled with commanders whose strategies and leadership have shaped the course of civilizations. Among these figures stands Qutayba ibn Muslim al-Bahili, a general whose campaigns in Central Asia during the early 8th century left an indelible mark on the geopolitical landscape of the time. This chapter endeavors to provide a critical analysis of Qutayba's legacy, examining his tactical decisions, the logistical challenges he faced, the historical context of his campaigns, and the psychological dimensions of his leadership. Historical context: the Umayyad expansion. The late 7th and early 8th centuries were a period of significant expansion for the Umayyad Caliphate. Under the leadership of caliphs such as Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan and his successors, the Umayyads sought to consolidate and expand their territories. Central Asia, with its wealthy cities and strategic trade routes, was a natural target for this expansion. The region was a melting pot of cultures, religions, and political entities, including the Tang dynasty's western territories and various Turkic and Iranian kingdoms. Qutayba ibn Muslim was appointed as the governor of Khorasan, a critical region that served as the gateway to Central Asia. His mission was to extend Umayyad influence into these lands, a task that required not only military prowess, but also diplomatic acumen and logistical expertise. Tactical decisions and logistics. Qutayba's campaigns in Central Asia were marked by a combination of calculated aggression and strategic diplomacy. According to the historian al-Tabari, Qutayba initially focused on securing the loyalty of local tribes and cities through a mix of military force and political alliances. This approach allowed him to establish a strong base of operations before launching deeper into Central Asia. One of Qutayba's most significant tactical decisions was his use of mobile cavalry units. These units were crucial for rapid deployments and surprise attacks, enabling him to outmaneuver his enemies and maintain control over vast territories. The logistics of supplying and maintaining such a force were daunting, but Qutayba's ability to secure local resources and establish supply lines ensured the sustainability of his campaigns. Psychological analysis of the conqueror asterisk. Qutayba's leadership style was characterized by a calm and calculated demeanor, which earned him the moniker the calm conqueror. This psychological attribute was not merely a personal trait, but a strategic asset. His ability to remain composed under pressure allowed him to make rational decisions in the heat of battle, a quality that inspired confidence in his troops and instilled fear in his enemies. Moreover, Qutayba's diplomatic skills were equally impressive. He understood the importance of winning the hearts and minds of the local populations. By respecting local customs and integrating local elites into his administration, he was able to create a more stable and enduring rule. This approach contrasted sharply with the more heavy-handed tactics employed by some of his contemporaries. Critical analysis of legacy. Qutayba's legacy is a subject of ongoing historical debate. On one hand, his campaigns significantly expanded the Umayyad Caliphate's territorial reach and laid the groundwork for future Islamic influence in Central Asia. His tactical innovations and diplomatic strategies set a precedent for future military leaders. On the other hand, his methods were not without controversy. The human cost of his campaigns, including the loss of life and the disruption of local societies, cannot be overlooked. The historian Ibn Kathir, in his work al-Bidayah wan Nihaya, provides a detailed account of Qutayba's campaigns, highlighting both his military successes and the challenges he faced. Ibn Kathir's narrative underscores the complexity of Qutayba's legacy, portraying him as a skilled commander whose actions had far-reaching consequences. Conclusion, a nuanced verdict asterisk. In conclusion, Qutayba ibn Muslim al-Bahili's legacy is a testament to the intricate interplay of military strategy, political acumen, and psychological insight. His campaigns in Central Asia were not merely acts of conquest, but also exercises in statecraft, designed to extend and consolidate Umayyad influence. While his achievements are undeniable, they must be viewed within the context of the human cost and the broader historical implications of his actions. As we reflect on Qutayba's legacy, it is essential to appreciate the multifaceted nature of his leadership. He was a conqueror, a diplomat, and a strategist whose decisions shaped the course of history. His story serves as a reminder of the complexities of military leadership and the enduring impact of strategic vision. In the annals of military history, Qutayba ibn Muslim al-Bahili stands as a figure of profound significance, his legacy a subject of both admiration and critical reflection.